Well, aren't you glad you joined me? Well, you know what this means. Summer is on the wane and deer season is just around the corner. Well, it's a little closer than it was last week at any rate. Hey, if you haven't picked out your rifle and ammunition yet, you might want to get started. It's not as easy to run down to the hardware store and pick up a box of your favorite ammo these days. So on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors, we're going to talk about choosing the perfect deer rifle. And this doesn't mean we're going to say there's one rifle that's absolutely perfect. We are going to investigate how any deer hunter should select amongst the various deer cartridges we all love. Stay tuned. Okay, before we dive into the cartridges, I want to again invite you to join us on Patreon. Our patrons help support these programming, and we really appreciate that kind of support. So if you've got a chance and would like to help out, just go to patreon.com and Ron Spomer Outdoors, and we thank you. Now, rifle cartridges for deer, it is often argued, and pretty much always argued, every time I do a video on these cartridges, somebody will say, they all kill deer. Why be so picky and so fussy and thinking about ballistics and trajectories and BC bullets? Just get a 30-30. It's absolutely the best. Well, I will agree that the 30-30 is a heck of a deer rifle, but so is the 300 Win Mag. And for some people, the 223 Remington. There is a broad field of cartridges that are used for hunting whitetail deer and mule deer. So what is the best cartridge? Well, there really isn't one. What you have to determine is what is best for your style of hunting. How do you hunt? Where do you hunt? What's the terrain like? How far do you want to reach out? There's a big difference between sitting in a blind, looking over a small corner field where your longest shot might be 50 yards, than there is in hiking the mountains out west and maybe shooting across a canyon at a big mule deer at 300 and 400 yards. So yeah, your 30-30 is not going to be so effective out in the west. But then again, there are hunters who prefer the thrill of the chase, the challenge of stalking and getting closer. And for them, the 30-30 might work just because they want that extra challenge. Covey, I don't remember inviting you up here. Why don't you come over and say hi to everybody? Come on. Come here, girl. Come on over. Stand up where everybody can see you. Yeah, there you go. Come on. Get up there. Not going to work. You better go downstairs where you belong because you're just going to get in trouble up here. You're going to interrupt this whole program, okay? If you can't do any tricks for us, nothing? Okay. See you around, buddy. Go. Yeah. She's heard you say you kind of like her, so now she's trying to sneak into every video we do. So where was I? Well, okay, talking about selecting the right cartridge and rifle for you. So I wrote down, just jogged some quick notes down here on what we want to look for in a cartridge for deer hunting. We're already talking about range and reach, so that's going to determine a lot of it. Another point that a lot of folks bring up is meat waste. You know, you shoot with a high velocity cartridge or something really big and you might waste a lot of meat from the damage of that high velocity shot. So you might want to consider that. The lower the velocity and the heavier the bullet and the stouter the bullet, the less extraneous damage you will get on impact. Then again, there's the argument that I would rather lose 5 pounds of meat off the shoulder than lose the whole animal because it wasn't an effective cartridge or bullet. Okay, there's good arguments on both sides of that. Another one, of course, is the trajectory. And as we said, if you're out west where you might have to shoot a long way, or even back east over big open fields, the bean fields and big cornfields these days, you're going to want a little more reach. So yeah, the 30-30 is plenty good enough for terminating a deer, but can you reach it? And that's where the arguments for things like the 300 Win Mag come into play. It's not because, we think we need that big, heavy bullet going 3,200 feet per second and all that sort of stuff. It's the ability to reach a distance and then still have enough energy. So that's what people are thinking about. And on that topic, I've got to bring up this big guy. This is the 300 Remington Ultra Magnum. This is getting up there towards the top of the velocity realm for a 308 cartridge. And I had a gentleman at one of the shows I was doing, a deer and deer hunting show, And he said, yeah, I was tired of having to look for my deer sometimes when I shot them. So I stepped up the power from like a 30-30 to a 30-06, and that still wasn't quite right. So I thought, I'm just going to go to that 300 Ultra Magnum and anchor every deer right there. So in the interest of accuracy, I said, well, how did that work for you? He said, well, the first year I took it out, I had a doe step out at about 100, 125 yards at the edge of a swamp there. And I took my shot, and she ran back into the swamp, and I never did find her. So much for the high velocity, heavy bullet routine working every time. That's the point. You just can't count on them always working all the time. But then I can remember when I was a kid on my first deer hunt in the Black Hills of South Dakota, a beautiful snowy day in the pines. I mean, it was like a magic Christmas card time. And I had 30-30 Model 94 Winchester. I thought I was one of the big guys, you know, grown up with a real rifle. Oh boy. And here comes another kid in the group shooting this. I said, what is that little thing? He said, it's a 222. I said, is that legal? I didn't think 22s were legal for deer. I didn't even know what a 222 was. And it turns out it was, and there are a lot of people who take deer cleanly with the 222 Remington as well as the 223. But in some states, they aren't even legal. So what's going on? Then I know guys who insist that the 45-70 is what you need for whitetail. Oh my gosh. You're throwing 300, 400 grain bullets with that thing. So once again, they all work, yes, but are they all going to do the job for where you hunt and how you hunt? So some of the other things we're going to consider in choosing our gun, our cartridges, is recoil. A lot of folks just don't like heavy recoil, so you have to step down a little bit. And that's where the 223s and the 22-250s and, the old 257 Roberts, great cartridge for deer hunting with very little recoil. These days, that little 6.5 Grendel is really starting to strike a chord with a lot of recoil-sensitive shooters because it'll shoot a 129, 130 grain bullet, and it's not hyper fast, but for out to 200, 250 yards, it more than carries the mail, and a lot of folks are just loving it because there's hardly any recoil. That, I think, is what made the 243 and the 244 or 6mm Remington so popular in the late 50s and into the 60s. They were a dual-purpose rifle. You could use them for hunting deer and pronghorn. A few folks will use them for elk. I don't think it's ideal, but they get the job done. But for deer, that just really proven to be an effective cartridge. Those are light recoiling ones that you might want to consider. I've taken a lot of deer with the 243s, and I have never had any reason to complain. So then there's cost and availability, and plenty of folks are concerned about that, especially now. If you get an odd cartridge, you might not find the ammunition, and you'll have a harder time finding a rifle chamber for it. So you do have to consider what kind of a rifle you enjoy shooting. Pump action, auto loading, lever action, bolt action, all kinds of them out there. That might determine what your choices could be. Ethics and aesthetics and tradition. There are a lot of folks who hunt deer for more reasons than just shooting the deer. It's that the whole experience that ties it all together for them and makes it almost a spiritual connection to the outdoors. And I'll have to confess to some of that myself. You know, as much as I enjoy the physical challenge and the meat, of course, and just being a successful hunter, the older I get, the more I enjoy the aesthetics of the whole experience. And for a lot of people, that means not just using any rifle, but using dad's rifle or your brother's rifle or your uncle's or someone who left you a special heritage or tradition. You know, and it might go back to that first rifle you shot as a kid. You might pull it out of the closet, blow the dust off of it, and rediscover a thrill that you didn't realize was still there. So there are a lot of things to consider in your deer rifles. Please don't say, they're all the same. They all kill deer as long as you hit them. Yeah, of course. But some of them make it more fun to go after the deer. They make it easier to reach out and put that bullet where you know it needs to go. And some of them are more affordable and easily obtainable. There are just lots of things to consider when you're picking your absolute best deer rifle. So choose carefully and hunt honest and shoot straight.